Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our Q&A session on the Digital Innovation Voucher. My name is Alan McDonagh. I'm Head of Business Development at DataDyne, and I'll be answering your questions throughout the day today. Now, if you could please submit your questions through the chat function. It's just down in the right-hand corner of your screen, and my colleague Killian will be helping me manage some of the questions in case I don't get to answer them all, but fingers crossed we do. Hi, James. Thank you very, very much for that question. It's a very common question we receive, and a lot of people ask questions in relation to what it means to become a data-driven business. There's a high probability that you would currently actually have data that's not being used. So if you're using any form of software tool that engages with your customers, you most likely have valuable data that can be used to improve your sales, marketing, and product development. So if you have a website and you're using Google Analytics, for example, you can find out a lot about your customers. You can learn about the pages they use the most, for example. This would be very, very useful. If you're an accountant and you have a blog where you share recent industry updates in relation to tax, for example, you can see that specific blog is getting a lot of attention by looking at your Google Analytics. You could then incorporate this into your monthly newsletter, because in your newsletter, you want to be answering the questions that your customer have. Now, if you sell products and you can see that one particular product page is getting a lot of traffic, but no one is purchasing this product, you can understand that there may be a fault on that product page that you need to fix. Now, you can also use Google Analytics to understand what people are searching for on Google to find your website. This is very valuable, as it could be incorporated into your future ad campaigns. By ad campaigns, I mean you spending money on any platform, such as Google Ads, to boost your business, sell a product, or advertise a service. So using the data from Google Analytics, you can increase the accuracy of your ads, which would also reduce the amount you actually need to spend to reach your target market. Now, the same goes for all of your social channels. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, they all have excellent data insights that you can use. Now, when you first look at them, they can be very overwhelming, but that's where the Digital Innovation Voucher comes in. You can work with a company just like us, and we show you how to use that data, how to view that data, how to analyze that data, and how to turn it into something productive. So you should really be using a combination of a variety of data sources and should be analyzing them all. They all play an important role in the decisions you need to be making for marketing and sales. So they could help you build what's called a buyer persona. This is basically your ideal customer or customers. You can learn about their ages, their locations, their genders, their online interests, and their online behavior. And you can see why that might be very valuable. If you were putting together an ad campaign, you can find out that, okay, my product is actually used more by women than men, or it's used more in the west of Ireland versus the east of Ireland. And then you can understand if you need to change your product, change your ads, what do you need to change to grow your audience, create a larger target market, or on the flip side, focus and create a more segmented individual target market. Hi, Marla. Thank you. Okay, yes. We can be more specific about what the voucher does in relation to enhancing your customer digital experience. Basically, you can use this voucher to improve how you interact with your clients or customers and how you retain them, but also how you attract more. Because if you improve the experience that people have, more than likely you're going to get more customers, or people will stay on your website or stay on your social channels or read your newsletter or read your blogs. So that is what you want people to be doing. At DataDyne, we specialize in the channels you interact with your customer. So some examples of this would be your emails and email marketing. If you sell products, you should be very focused on each email that your customers receive. A very common question we would get asked is relation to when you have customers that fill up their cart full of products and then leave your site and don't buy anything. What are you saying in a follow-up email to encourage them to come back? With this, you can learn a lot about your customers. A lot of people will reply and give you feedback, or the email you write in general could actually just attract them to make that purchase or make part of that purchase. Davey, thank you very much. Yes, this can be used in relation to email marketing. So a lot of people have complaints in relation to email marketing that essentially their emails land in people's spam inboxes or they're not being read. Why? You might need to change the software you're using. You could be using a software that doesn't suit your business or a software that you don't understand, you're having difficulty using. It could also be in relation to what you are saying, your written content. Are you being too salesy? That could be a big problem. You need to be answering the questions people have in your responses or in your email marketing or in your newsletters. That's what people want. They want knowledge. They don't want something salesy. Hi, John. Thank you very, very much. Yes, it can also be used to create a plan to improve your website. So looking at your website, you might feel that, oh, it looks great, it's doing really well, but then you look at the analytics and you're looking at your sales and you're seeing it's not doing too well. You need to make it easy for people to buy from your site. This is something you should be focusing on and constantly updating based on what the market desires, what your analytics are telling you, or what your customers are telling you. We live in a world where people's attention spans have dropped significantly, as well as their patience. People are not patient online anymore. If you cannot buy quickly on your site, you will most likely lose your customer to a competitor that is actually investing regularly in their customer experience. So that is the area we would specialize in relation to customer experience. Any point where you interact with a customer. So anything at all, the emails you send in relation to sales, trying to land a sale, trying to get feedback from that customer. There are a variety of different things in there for your customer experience. It could even be something as simple as integrating a chatbot to your website or integrating a chat function that connects to your WhatsApp. So it means if a customer has a quick question on a product, you can reply there and then, allowing them to make that sale or close the deal you want to close. Sheila, thank you very, very much for joining today. And yeah, that's a great question in relation to internal process optimization. It does sound very, very broad, and it is a very broad subject. What we would generally do when we begin with the client that has issues with their internal processes is we would carry out a full audit. What we would do here is sit down with you and all your relevant staff members and understand every single little thing you do in your day-to-day. And that's in relation to interacting with your employees, the communication methods you use. It could be in relation to your accounting software, or do you have an accounting software? So let me get a little bit more specific out there. There are a number of tools you can use to do those boring administrative jobs you hate and take up a lot of your time. A good idea here, before you even go forward with this voucher, is to actually take a look at every little thing you do yourself and take note of the time you spend on doing these individual tasks, and then ask yourself if you're wasting time on something that could be handled by a software. Think about like processing your payments, invoices, quotes, anything like that, or even writing all of your sales emails manually or your marketing emails manually. This could be something that you could use templates for example. If you know that you say roughly the same or a similar thing to each individual customer when you first reach out to them, that should be automated. You should not be spending those 10, 15 minutes writing individual emails. With a template, you can write the majority and personalize it slightly. It will save you a huge amount of time. So that is one of the most popular areas that we would work with clients for in relation to this voucher and optimizing one of their internal processes. You should also think about what your hourly rate is. So all of us have a rough idea of how much we cost per hour for our services. So for example, if you're an accountant, you most likely have an hourly rate. Now you need to think that you're essentially losing money every hour you're working on tasks that could be automated. That might encourage you to think about using that piece of software. And some of these softwares might look quite costly, but if you break them down into hourly rates and compare them to your hourly rate, you will see things very, very differently. Okay, folks, sorry if I'm leaning into the screen from time to time. I'm actually just trying to read some of your questions as well, just to make sure I'm answering them correctly. And again, if anyone has needs more clarification on any particular question, just pop that note into the chat and I can go into it in more detail. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email just in relation to this with more details, how you can access the voucher and the steps that you need to take. So don't worry about the process. We'll get to that. Now, thank you. Bobby says he has no experience online whatsoever. I'm sure you do, Bobby, but okay, let's start with the absolute basics. Bobby's asking about training. So does this cover training? Now, unfortunately, direct training is actually not covered under the voucher scheme, but an advisory plan outlining the training that should be carried out for your team can be included. So this is referred to as identification of required skill development needs. So in our case, we would figure out the areas that your employees are really struggling with. So for example, it could be you've hired a new intern to manage your social media channels and they are really struggling. Maybe they're currently studying at the moment and their technical skills are not up to scratch. So we would sit down with that employee, talk to them, understand the weak areas or the areas they're struggling with, and put together a concrete plan for you to follow in relation to improving their skills and bringing them to the level that you need. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the chat here. Lots and lots of good questions. This is fantastic. Okay, I'm sorry if I don't get to them all, but I'll do my best, and any of the questions we do not get to, we'll put together a document, answer all those questions and send them to everyone here. So if you miss it, don't worry. Okay, so Kevin says, I don't have any experience or knowledge of e-business. So even though the voucher says it covers up to 9,000, I have no idea how much it will cost to bring my company up to speed. So we're still struggling after COVID. I don't have any extra money to spend. Yeah. Kevin, you're in the position of a lot of companies right now that are getting back on their feet after a very difficult 2 years. Okay, you said your business has 15 employees. Is the voucher likely to cover all your costs? Now, the voucher is advisory only. So you will, I shouldn't say only, advisory is still very, very valuable, and that plan can be used to do all of this and get your business back to the level it needs to be in terms of its online presence, internal processes, data management, etc. Cybersecurity, for example. You'll receive a plan that will outline all of the steps you'll need to take to digitalize your business. So if you're planning to become an e-commerce business, for example, this will give you a step-by-step plan on how to achieve this from each perspective. So from sales perspective, marketing perspective, cybersecurity, the internal processes, the softwares you'll need to implement, and a good rough idea of the spend you should have going forward to achieve this. So this would essentially reduce the cost that you would incur when you proceed with a development company. So for example, when we're sitting down with the client and developing an e-commerce store, we need to put together a plan. And we need to do this at the start of every single development build. And that costs us hours. So if you have this plan already completed and you give this to another development company, that will reduce the overall cost of development and design for you. Essentially, you've bypass the planning stage and you're straight into the development phase. So I don't know if I've answered your question perfectly there, Kevin, but please feel free to send me an email, add another question to the chat, and we can follow up on that and go into more detail. Larry, okay, great question. It's in relation to cybersecurity. Larry has asked, if my online business gets hacked as a result of being more visible online and making the initiative, what are my options? Could that end up being costly for myself? An online hack can absolutely be very, very costly. If you think about the fact that it depends on what your business does, but a data breach, okay, everyone's familiar with the recent data breach of the HSE. That was caused by human error. So something very, very simple. What we would do at DataDyne in relation to cybersecurity is, once again, sit down with your entire team, understand every single interaction they have online or from their PC with every single software you have. Then we put together a tailor-made cybersecurity plan that you can share internally and essentially have a protocol for everyone to follow to minimize risk to as little as possible. We can also put together a contingency plan that if something does happen, what can you do? What are the steps that you need to take? So each plan will essentially include the steps your company needs to take online to maintain the highest possible level of security for your online presence. Now, not taking advantage of this scheme, if you have an existing online presence, would actually put you more at risk of being hacked. You should have something in place. You should have a plan that your employees follow if you're dealing with any form of data. So if you are an accountancy practice and you are taking in invoices, that people are uploading invoices directly onto your website, that is very, very sensitive data. And if that is leaked, you could be in a lot of trouble. Now, I'm no master of accountancy or of anything to do with accountancy law, but I think we all know that that can be a massive risk. James asks, how long does it take to get approval for the voucher? So unfortunately, there's no set time to get approval. It depends on Enterprise Ireland's workload and capacity to review their applications. In our experience, the approval process takes roughly 3 to 4 weeks from the initial digital scorecard completion to official approval. Haha, the money question. So Bridget has asked, when do I get the 9K? So Bridget, you'll receive the reimbursement following payment to your service provider and following review of all your documents. So Enterprise Ireland essentially have to go through, make sure that you've actually achieved what was said in the original request. And then, sorry, you also need to supply a list of documents. And I'm actually going to read these off because I do not know them from memory, unfortunately. So, A, you need a completed digital scorecard. That will be on Enterprise Ireland's website. Completed digitalisation voucher report. There is a template there for you. An output report from the consultant. So you'll work with Enterprise Ireland on this. We can also advise you on it as we've helped many clients. Completed digitalization claim director's statement. So again, Enterprise Ireland will talk you through all of that specifically to make sure it's in the correct format, correct wording, etc. You'll also need a copy of the service provider's invoice to show Enterprise Ireland and proof that you have paid the service provider. So that could be something as simple as a screenshot from your bank statement or your online banking showing that you have paid DataDyne for their services. Now, one thing to note in relation to that 9K is the VAT that is due. If you're registered for VAT, you will need to pay VAT and then reclaim it in the appropriate normal way that you would usually reclaim your VAT. Kelly has asked, what work would you be doing and for how long? Kelly, this is probably quite a long question. So what I'll do now is I'll go through each of the 3 sectors that you can work on in a little bit of detail, and we can go into more detail if needs be. Now, just to say that cybersecurity is taken into account at each individual stage, I'll probably repeat that as I speak, but cybersecurity is crucial to this entire scheme. So internal process optimization. We work with clients essentially to improve their communication channels, their project management, their sales, and their marketing. Those are our areas of expertise, and those are the areas we work in. So an example of this could be introducing a new technology to improve your internal communication, like Slack, for example, in case anyone's heard of that. It could also be reviewing your existing sales process to make it more efficient in documentation and automation. So some of you that maybe have a sales process in place, you might be manually writing every single invoice, quote, every single email that you have. That is old school, and you don't need to do that. You can save a lot of time and money there. So you use software tools essentially to automate those activities. Software tools could also be used to automate marketing activities through your social channels. So I don't know if some of you are familiar, but there are software such as Hootsuite. Hootsuite essentially allows you to upload all of the content required for your different social channels, your images, your text, your hashtags, and put them into Hootsuite, and it automatically posts them on the days and times that you want. Now, for anyone that is using social media very regularly, think about how much time that will save you. You could sit down for one day in the month and plan out your entire month. Now, you'll still need to obviously create your content, create your graphic design material, create your written text that you want to put with each post or videos that you want to upload. But essentially it's one day for the administrative tasks rather than, I don't know, maybe 10 days or 20 days in the month where you're constantly checking and making sure everything's uploaded correctly. Hootsuite is fantastic and essentially bulletproof, let's say. Now, in terms of enhancing your customer digital experience, this involves an initial review of your current products, services, and channels. So by channels, I mean your website, your social media profiles, your online presence. So that could be even your Google My Business, for example. So we review all of this and we put together a plan of action for you to carry out to ensure your customers receive a better experience overall. That's the important thing here. So this should include a digital review of your customer journey, including all customer touchpoints. So sales, marketing, customer service, delivery channels, life cycle, your competitor analysis, every aspect there to ensure you're doing it correctly, you're doing it in the most up-to-date, modern fashion. So we specialize in sales, marketing, customer service, channels, and competitor analysis again. Now, on to becoming a data-driven business. So this is probably the scariest one for most businesses because they're looking at data and they don't know what to do with it. They're seeing all these charts, they're seeing all these statistics, and they're wondering, what the hell am I going to do with any of this? That's where we come in. We sit down, look at the tools you have, show you how to analyze this data, show you how to create reports, show you how to use that data and implement it into your marketing and sales processes and product development. So when you understand you're using the right tools to gather the data, you can then use the data to improve everything. So we would give you a plan of action. Essentially, again, this is what this is about. It's an advisory process. We put together a plan. We ensure that people have the facilities to be trained correctly to use this. I would say a very relatable example would be Google Analytics, because if you have a website, you have Google Analytics. If you don't have Google Analytics, why would you have a website? Google Analytics essentially allows you to get as much data as possible about your customer, about your website, the traffic it's getting, which is obviously very important. You can see the pages that people actually are visiting and understand, why are they visiting those pages? Imagine that you are a shopping center and you see that your opening times page is getting a lot of visits. Okay, make that opening page look better. Maybe add something to that opening page that makes customers interact more. What could you do with that page to improve it? Should you maybe have a map? Should you have a contact form that allows people to get directly in touch with you? Should you have parking details on your opening hours page that could, I don't know, make people feel more comfortable using your services or more likely to visit your shopping center? Now, Dennis asks, how will you assess digital maturity and room for improvement from my company? Okay, so the digital maturity, I think what you mean here, Dennis, is how do you gauge the level of understanding of the staff members in terms of digital tools? So there's actually a digital scorecard as part of the process. It's the first step you do, and this is to understand where you're at. Now, that's one little part of it. When we come in, we sit down with you and all of your relevant employees and understand what their level is, because that allows us to establish what training you're going to need going forward to get to the level you want to be. So it's essentially 2 points there. How will DataDyne ensure cybersecurity for us? Thank you, Katie. Very good question. Also very difficult to answer because it really does depend on your business and the complexity of your needs and the complexity of what you do and how you interact online. So once again, we sit down with all the relevant stakeholders, understand what softwares you use and every single interaction you have that could potentially cause a cybersecurity issue, let's say. Then we put together a plan to minimize risk as much as possible. And we also put together a protocol, let's say, for your employees to use going forward to ensure that the risk is essentially quite low. Now, we cannot guarantee that your website is going to be perfectly secure or your systems are going to be perfectly secure because unfortunately, human error always comes into play, and it is the most common problem in relation to cybersecurity. The tools don't cause the problems, the people do. So yeah, that's what our plan would essentially achieve. We put together the protocol, and if your employees follow the protocol, there should be no risk. Little to no risk. Okay, Rory has asked, what will my company receive from the 9K Digital Innovation Voucher? Now, very big question, quite difficult to answer in a small amount of me speaking, so I'll do my best. Essentially, you will receive a plan of action, depending on the areas you want to focus on, that will allow you to A, optimize or use the data that you have to optimize certain processes or your product, or it really depends on what data that you have. In relation to internal processes, again, a plan of action will be put together that you can follow. This could involve the use of specific software tools, like for example, a CRM, which is a customer relationship management tool. This can save a huge amount of time for your business. Or it could be looking at your customer journey from the customer experience side of things. And again, it would be a detailed analysis of your current process and current customer experience, and then looking at different ways that we could improve that process or experience that people have. Essentially a roadmap for you to follow to achieve what you want to achieve. So whether that be an increase in sales, a reduction in admin time, more automation for your business, upskilling your employees, or increasing cybersecurity or preventing cybersecurity issues. That's what you would receive, and that's the voucher focuses on, that service. Okay, now. Okay, Sarah has asked, how can I identify as being in what stage of the digital business journey my company is in? Now, Your Enterprise Ireland advisor and your chosen supplier will be able to tell you that based on speaking to you and asking certain questions about your company. There's no fixed stage. Imagine it more like a spectrum. People are somewhere along that level or understanding in their processes or their data management or optimizing their customer journey. It really depends on the nature of your business, but look, book in a discovery call and we can ask you questions that will help us understand more about where you are. Okay, Mohammed has asked, how long will it take? Very, very good question, Mohammed. And it really, again, I hate saying it over and over again, but it really does depend. Ideally, 6 to 12 weeks, but this depends on the complexity of your needs, your capacity, and time resources. So how much time do you have to give to this? Sit down with us in different meetings and help us put together that plan. Now, that will give you the plan going forward. Ideally, then you will need to put in a lot of work afterwards to achieve those goals outlined in the plan. Okay, Mary has asked, what is included in the review of your current operational processes and systems to identify opportunities for improvement? Wow, okay, that's a fantastic question. So we would carry out initial assessment of your current operational processes. Now, DataDyne's specializes in communication processes, sales processes, and marketing processes. And we also look at different softwares you could potentially use from an operational process perspective. So for example, if you're an accountant and you are currently managing all of your invoices, quotes, etc. for work manually, by manually I mean typing everything out, we could look at integrating a software there. Now, to go back to the more general aspect of the question, our initial assessment would involve speaking to all relevant stakeholders and gathering as much feedback as possible. Following this, our team put together a plan, essentially targeting the pain points you're currently facing. So again, it could be in relation to your sales, it could be in relation to wasted time you have, and it could just be a case of you have software tools, you're paying monthly fees for them, and you're just not using them and wasting them. So we want to help you with that as well. Then this will go on to a plan of action with all of the relevant steps that you actually need to take in order to achieve your desired improvements. Enda has asked, what are the contents of cybersecurity risk review and recommendations? Okay, very, very good question. And this also depends very much so on where your business is at, the level of knowledge of your employees, and a variety of different other aspects that could affect the protocol that we would recommend. So essentially, this goes back to what I said before. We sit down, we understand exactly all of the touch points your employees have with any softwares that you use. Then we put together a bespoke protocol of how you can minimize risk as much as possible. In relation to passwords, how often you change passwords, how your customers interact, what networks they connect to in terms of Wi-Fi, are they using Wi-Fi in other locations, etc. Now, I'm no cybersecurity expert, but we do have a cybersecurity expert in-house. So they would be the ones to answer those questions in more detail, and we would be able to answer them in much greater detail once we sit down and have that initial analysis and review with you and your team members. Okay, we're getting quite a few similar questions, but that's great because I might miss something with other questions that I ask. This has come in from Ahmed. Now, Ahmed, what is included in the current product, service, and channel review? Okay, this involves an initial review of your current products, services, and channels. Of course, channels would be, let's say, your website, social media profiles, anything that is your online presence. We then put together a plan for you to carry out to ensure that, for example, your customers receive a better experience from a customer service perspective. This would also include digital review of your customer journey, including all of the touch points that you would have from sales, marketing, customer service, delivery, channels, product lifecycle, competitor analysis. We specialize in sales, marketing, customer service, again, channels, and competitor analysis. Now, cybersecurity is also taken into consideration at each stage, regardless of the area that you want to focus on, whether that be internal processes, data optimization, or your customer experience. Okay, Rory has asked again. Rory, thank you for all the questions, by the way, much appreciated. What is the goal of creating a high quality digital experience for customers? Okay, Rory, so the goal of this is to, the bottom line, improve your sales, improve your revenue. It could also be growing your online community or your network, and increasing data security, very, very big one, and something most people just simply ignore, and they really shouldn't, because it can be a huge issue for your business if there is some form of data breach, depending on the data that you have and manage. It could be improving your customer service and getting more reviews. But essentially, the goal is here. The bottom line, increase your revenue overall, whatever means that would be, and decreasing the time wasted on administrative processes that can be automated and should be automated. And if you're not automating, you're falling behind the competition, because if they're doing better than you, they most likely are doing that. Okay, another question from Rory. What customer touch points should be included in the digital review? Okay, so email, the big one that we all use all the time. Your website, massive as well. Even things like the documents you send out to customers. So contracts, quotes, how are they sent? Is it accessible for everyone to access those contracts that you share, or those quotes? How do people pay your invoices? Your social media platforms. What community engagement strategies do you have? Your Zoom calls. So a lot of people still struggle with online video softwares that can be really intimidating for certain people. So we can put together a plan of action for you to make that more comfortable for your employees and more consistent for everyone. So everyone is following essentially a plan that just makes it easier and more comfortable for them. A big one would also be your Google My Business profile. A lot of people still don't have these. It's essential. People find you through search engines, and your Google My Business profile is that little box that appears on the right-hand side of the screen when you search a business or a company. It should pop up just there. It contains the name of the business, details to access your website, your phone number, booking if you like, your products, recent announcements, your service locations, your location on the map. It's like your digital business card, essentially, with way more functionality. If you don't have one, get one. Google My Business profile, set it up. So yes, that would be, I've probably forgotten a few, but that would probably be most of the touch points that we would cover. Okay, Mark has asked, who can fulfill my company's expectation of improving the digital customer experience? Okay, so Mark, what I think you're talking about here is, because it's an advisory service for the Digital Innovation Voucher, you're wondering who carries out the work afterwards. Fantastic question. The best option, if the company that creates the plan has the capacity to complete the work, I would go with that company, because essentially they already know everything they need to know about that business. If you hand that plan over to a third-party supplier, they're going to need to analyze that plan and are probably going to have a lot of follow-up questions for you, potentially. So essentially, it can be any supplier that has the capacity to complete this, but the recommendation is sticking with the person who has created the plan because they know how to follow that plan perfectly. Also, sticking with the same supplier would most likely reduce the cost you would have to complete the work, because again, they know exactly how they would do it, and that's how they created the plan. I hope I answered that well enough. Mark, thank you very much for that question. Okay, Esmeralda has asked, how can I use current data to drive customers and improve opportunities in my business? Esmeralda, now that is something you would learn after completing this voucher. So it will completely depend on your business and business analysis results and the report that's generated. So I would need to look at your business in a lot of detail with our very talented team to understand and be able to answer that question correctly. So sorry, again, very, very vague, Esmeralda, but that is the best I can do. I could go into an hour-long spiel about this and pull in other colleagues that I have, but it would be something that really would require a detailed analysis first. Okay, Thomas, absolutely great question. How can I improve the various data production methods in my business? So once again, this would be outlined in the plan following completion of your business analysis. And this entirely depends on the nature of your business. Generally, this would be achieved by integrating particular software tools or specific software tools that measure and aggregate data related to your business processes. So one that a lot of people might know would be Google Analytics. And this could also be your CRM, for example, HubSpot, that would have a lot of valuable data there. It would also be your content management system or your e-commerce system, let's say Shopify. Shopify has amazing data that a lot of people just generally ignore when they have a Shopify site. So essentially using that data to improve your website, marketing, and sales processes, as well as your products themselves. Oh, we have another great question from Mohammed. So Mohammed has asked, how can I develop strategies based on the information I gather in my business? Okay, so first of all, I think data is very, very important here. You're going to focus on the data that can relate to certain areas of your business. So for example, Google Analytics, again, just to use an example that some people can relate to, Google Analytics can be used to build a buyer persona or user profile or customer profile, or essentially like your perfect customer or customers or a group of customers. This will be done by looking at the current traffic to your site, looking at the ways people find you, the demographics that they are or have, so their location, their age, their gender, their interests, as well as looking at the behavioral patterns that they have. Google Analytics can tell you a lot. Not just Google Analytics as well. Let's think of any platform, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, all have fantastic analytical insights platforms that are not easy to understand, but once you've gotten a bit of advice, you can start to really understand that data and then begin to use it. So that is how I would think of developing a lot of strategies for the business. Now, from a marketing perspective, you would need to sit down with people that are experts in marketing, because marketing is evolving so fast that you need to be sitting down with someone that is really, really up to speed on that before you can put together any form of marketing strategy. It's so diverse, so broad, and so misunderstood at times. So essentially, I would recommend sitting down with professionals that will most likely know more about those processes and work with you, who would be the knowledge leaders of your own business, and in a collaborative process, create your strategy. Okay, so David has asked, who can I go to certify that COVID-19 has had an impact on my business? Do you require sales movement data? Okay, so Enterprise Ireland actually has something outlined here that's quite specific, so I'm literally going to read it back to you. Give me one moment now. Okay, so Enterprise Ireland has defined this as a loss of potential revenue. Impacted by COVID is defined as have suffered or be projected to suffer a 15% or more reduction in the actual or projected turnover or profit as a result of COVID-19 outbreak, and or have had a significant increase in operational costs as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. Essentially, if you have lost 15% or have projected to lose 15% as a result of COVID, or have had significantly more that you've had to spend to operate your company or survive, that is what they would consider having COVID having impacted your business. Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you to absolutely everyone who joined today and asked the questions. They were some fantastic questions, and I hope I've answered them as well as possible. Again, if there's anything missing, we'll be having follow-up webinars in relation to this, just to educate people about the process of the Digital Innovation Voucher and the services DataDyne can provide and has provided to individuals and businesses. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And come back next time or sign up to our newsletter. And yeah, we'll constantly be sharing knowledge about your online presence, everything digital, marketing, website development, sales. Come to us. We would love you to book in a discovery call, meet the team and work with us. Thank you very much.